Greetings, everyone. A very warm welcome to this session presented to you by Francis, Bizoza, Bijirimana, and
Bennett Alinda, and we are presenting live from Uganda.
the Relearn Festival this year is focused on the paradigm shifts that will bring a global shift in education. Our topic, an innovative approach to colonially rooted learning in Africa, is therefore a build up on what can be done to improve the learner experiences in a new sphere.
Our topic therefore demands that we use a 5-way test in examining how colonially rooted learning in Africa can be assisted by the cultural diversity on our continent to make it a more innovative process and improve on the learner experience.
Our 5 metrics include 1. What was the process of learning that predated colonization? 2. What are the hallmarks of colonially founded methods of learning? 3. Examples of cultural practices and methods of learning that existed. 4. An explanation of how an integration of both systems of learning can improve the learner experiences, which will bring us to a conclusion. We shall now examine how each of the questions addresses its effects on what this system has given birth to in the mind of a continuously learning African. Before colonization, the African mostly learned through transmission of knowledge from adult to child. This transmission was done orally. It would be around fireplaces where the elderly told stories to the young children of events, customs, and traditions that their tribes draw them to, and it did not have a formal way or an organized structure of learning. And this form of learning was holistic. This holistic experience comprised acquiring a set of skills necessary for preparing the young for responsibilities that come with adulthood. Africa was divided along tribal lines, and it was necessary to learn how different cultural aspects taught the young about the history of their tribes and what they must do in preparation of their future roles as kinsmen and tribal elders. Therefore, pre-colonial society leveraged on community-focused approaches to ensure a complete learning experience. Colonization of African continent happened in the 19th century, and it marked the beginning of the end of traditional African education. European forces, missionaries, and colonialists all came ready and willing to change existing traditions to meet their own needs and ambitions. They introduced structured systems of education based on classes and grades. For example, in Uganda we have primary education, we have secondary education, and then university or tertiary education, which was not the case with the African informal education system. The system introduced subjects specific to particular learning areas such as mathematics, English, science, and several other subjects, unlike in the African setting where learning approaches were generalized. The main components of the African curriculum was less focused on structure and curriculum or even subjects and more focused on lessons being handed down generally. Language is another hallmark that came along with colonization, limiting language of instruction to the language of colonizers. Limits on teaching curriculum and ensuring that the curriculum did not reflect any Afro-ethnicity. For example, belligerents under King Leopold prohibited access to higher education to their colonies. This is one of the forms with barriers that the colonial machinery used in creating an education and learning infrastructure that only met their needs but was also devoid of African cultural experience. Furthermore, the language base in Africa today still reflects the colonial footprints as former colonies maintained, owned the colonial master language. East Africa speaks English, Western Africa speaks French, and part of South Africa speaks Portuguese. And this shows how colonial masters have continued, or their culture has continued to exist in Africa. Thank you.
We will now delve into the third and the fourth metrics, and we will combine them so that we can lend some perspective to this conversation. The third metric speaks to the examples of cultural practices and methods that can be used as a source of education, while the fourth looks into how a combination of both systems can create the synergy that is necessary to improve the learner experience. I would therefore like to draw your attention to a number of cultural practices around the Horn of East Africa. For example, in Uganda, there are two specific practices I would like to draw your attention to. One is called Echisakate, which literally translated into English would be the royal enclosure, which is a practice in central Uganda, and the Imbalu circumcision ceremonies that take place in eastern Uganda. The Echisakate is a leadership, development, and mentorship camp, mainly for young people, especially those from central Uganda, and it uses the cultural education and heritage as a mean to reshape traditions. It is a seamless example of what a blend of modernity and tradition can achieve, because it leverages on culture to harness and improve the quality of life. Therefore, our younger students and our younger friends and colleagues have the opportunity to experience a very traditionally grounded process with blends of modernity to help them better appreciate their culture. If I can now draw your attention to the Imbalu circumcision, which is popular among a tribal group called the Bamasaba in eastern Uganda. The nature of the ceremony is that it occurs in the even-numbered years, especially in the months of August or December. And it is a public event which forms part of the initiation into manhood. It is the biggest qualifier in the Bamasaba region of a boy passing from being a child to being an adult. What happens is that the persons to be initiated cover ash on their faces, and when they're done covering ash on their faces, they are carried on shoulders of a very joyous crowd, in which crowd they see loved ones as they celebrate the practice of crossing over and ensuring and getting the responsibilities of adulthood. If we look at the two practices, what can such practices teach us about the necessary freedoms that people have, their rights and their responsibilities? And how can such practices be balanced with the cultural incentives that make them whole and make them worth enduring? It is such questions that we hope to integrate in examining different practices. I would like to draw your attention to a practice in Rwanda which has become part of their culture called Umuganda, which is carried out on every last Saturday of the month, and it involves community cleanups, and this is done in teams and with shared values like hard work. Such a process can be used to explain concepts that relate to cleanliness, good health and quality living, shared values, and gender roles. This is because the work is distributed evenly and there's no discrimination in how work is allocated and done. We can also bear reference to the fact that most African countries have a rich culture of traditional songs and dances. These have for long been the way of communicating experiences. We believe that such dances, such tools can be used to root the understanding of people and ground them in aspects of equity and equality. Therefore, we are focused on getting complex subjects and translating them into known patterns and practices in the different cultural spheres across Africa. In conclusion, we look at the cultural diversity of Africa as a means of furthering the learner experience and improving their understanding of subjects, complex and easy alike. We thank you for your attention, and we are eager to meet you in the Q&A session to deliberate a little more and answer any questions that may have ensued from this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much.